Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Smack the Markets midweek market update and live stream. Today, what an interesting day. I thought we might have some sort of conclusion on the presidential election by now, but as time goes on, it seems to be even more more uncertainty coming in, doesn't it? Morning, Miles. Morning, Martin. So as usual, please just take a few moments just to read through the risk disclaimers here, make sure that you're comfortable with it. In brief, we're not licensed to be able to give advice, so the sessions here are purely for training purposes only and of interest. So, well, of course, we're all fully aware of the US elections. No real clear outcome on that just yet. Last time, when President Trump got into office, certainly by this time, we knew that President Trump had won the election. This time, well, I started seeing the markets this morning, and I thought, looking at the results and seeing that Mr. Trump had won a number of key battlegrounds, I thought he might be on the path to getting in. But then as the morning's progressed, we've seen sort of a lot of possible contested votes, and that sort of added more uncertainty into the markets. And one thing I know for sure is that markets don't like uncertainty, and that looks like what we're starting to get drawn into now. Now, how long that's likely to take, I don't know. Some of these states are saying that the postal votes could take some time to count, and that could take quite a long time before we get a conclusion. So these markets could be quite choppy until then. Morning, Michael. Morning, Martin. So let's take a look at what we've got going here. I mean, I've taken a full scan through the markets here. Fergal's taken a full scan through the markets, doing the morning prep in the trading room, and there's a lot of, you can see some of the key markets, a lot of uncertainty in them, and we've got no sort of clear direction in many of the others as well. So, and on the top of that, everything is poised to change once we get some sort of conclusion, and that could be any time. So it's going to be quite a challenging time, I think, in the markets this morning. So let's just first of all start off with the markets that we discussed on Monday, and look at what sort of actually happened, and the ones that what we were looking at on Monday when we had a little bit more sort of clearer direction, and then maybe sort of take a look at what could happen if certain sort of scenarios unfolded. Again, if you've got markets that you want us to go and take a look at live, as long as I've got the data here, then flag them up and post them into the comments box, and I'll take a look at those and we'll discuss those. So first of all, we discussed the Dow here on Monday, and interesting, what we'd seen sort of last week here was that the market had sold off pretty heavily the previous week, and we'd come down to a key sort of 26,000 level on the futures contract. Now, obviously what we're looking at here is the cash market, which is slightly different numbers, but the market structures are pretty much the same. Now, the 26 price point on the futures is about a tick or two under, tick or two over this spike low here. So very interesting that the market came down to such a key structure point in price action, and we had a clean bounce off that. And as we looked going into the election, we thought we might start to see a bit of buying coming in, particularly, you know, as the market had sold off so sort of heavily. So, and that's what we've seen. I mean, that theme has continued right the way up here, getting through 27,000, getting through even up to 27,500, and until we started to see the volatility created by the election time. Now, if we come down to the 4-hour time frame, you can see that up here we've got a number of structure levels that the market has sort of sailed up to, and now we're starting to get the huge volatility. If I just sort of zoom into that slightly, you can see the huge volatility that's now being sort of created in this sort of indecision that's coming into the markets. So a few things that we can sort of see here. Again, it's trying to mix up technical structures and sort of best technical analysis with a sort of a fundamental backdrop that is very, very uncertain at the moment. We can certainly see that there is some key support in these markets, and I think there's a general sort of census here that if there is some certainty that comes out of this, and I think if it's sort of well documented that if Mr. Trump gets back in to office, possibly I might sort of reiterate with a clean, uncontested, decision there, then we could see a stimulus package being delivered to the markets quicker than if there was a change of president in the office. Now, if that happens, of course, what these markets are really being driven by is stimulus. So the markets will love that, and we might start to see a quicker stimulus package, which might start to see a bit of a boost here in equity markets. Now, I was looking at this price action this morning, and you can see there where my cursor is that price has sort of topped out here on the 4-hour time frame a couple of times. So we've seen two tests here to the highs overnight, and that sort of coincides with a structure level that we've had on our futures charts, and that's 27,700 on the futures charts, give or take a tick or two. On the cash market, it's 27,780. So you've got that sort of structure level there that we can see that we've got key resistance in the markets. It's a level that we know it's been there many times, traded around this many times before. So clearly, I think a break above there could be an indication that, again, obviously with the political backdrop being sort of concluded as well, we might start to look for new buying opportunities, perhaps looking for a stronger Dow. We can see here on the 4-hour time frame that the next sort of range here of structure puts us up in towards that sort of 28,000 sort of price point and beyond. So getting up here, I think we've got a clear window of move to the long side. And I think if we saw some move like that to break through this sort of 27,700 or 27,780 area, then we could see much more than that. I think we could see a push right the way into this trading, this sort of consolidation zone up here, and possibly even getting up here towards the top end of this. So we've got a trading window here to the long side. Market is sort of looking a little bit more bullish at the moment, but as we know, that can change at any time at the moment. And of course, the easy answer here to the short side is if we get a takeout of these lows, again with some sort of political decision, then look for that 26,000 level on the futures, 26,115 on the cash market. These lows here effectively look for those lows to be tested in the short term. Now, of course, with these lows here get taken out, then we've got, again, if I come up to the higher time frames here, possibly better if I came over to my weekly chart, then we've got some, underneath these lows, we can see that we've got some potential here for some significant weakness. And not only that, it also confirms all of these structures that we've got in place now across these time frames of a double top formed and a break to the short side. And we know that's a very, very bearish pattern, and we could see some significant weakness to the short side on this. So let's just see if we've got anything sort of clearer here on the slightly lower time frames. So again, I think on the lower time frames, we've got this sort of window here coming down to the hourly chart here. Even here's our sort of level at the top end, and even looking at sort of a some sort of bracket over this, there's quite a huge range. So with quite a huge range like this, it's not really something I'd like to sort of look at positioning over this. I'd want to see something a little bit sort of more decisive or a bit tighter. So going to be interesting times going forward. So let's come back and discuss oil, because on oil, we had some nice trades on oil last week as we caught some of this move down here. Now the market has retraced right the way back, and there have been some interesting things taking place with oil. Saudi Arabia have really put out the warnings that they don't want traders to sort of drive the prices down, weaken oil prices. That happened a few weeks ago. One of the things that we've seen also happen since then is the US oil stocks have been reported to be sort of fairly full. So that was quite sort of bearish on the markets. Then we saw Libya. Now Libya's oil production is now starting to come back on stream, and there's been a lot of talk about whether OPEC plus quotas need to be sort of readjusted, and there's been all sorts of this sort of discussion and these sort of big key things going on, which has been moving the price of oil here. The things that got us interested in this, first of all, last week was when the market took out this $39 level, and that sort of broke this sort of consolidation that you can see up here for some time. We expected the market to move down to 36. We didn't quite catch all of the move all the way down to 36, but 36 is this lower level here. We can see what happened. The market actually went beyond 36, and now we've retraced right the way back up, and it's not far off that 39 level again at the moment. On the daily, from a technical structure, things are starting to look a little bit more interesting here. The challenge is that the current daily candle is looking rather large at this moment in time. Let's just come down a little bit lower. If we come down to the 4-hour time frame, again we can see that we've got structure levels in here, previous support and resistance areas where the market's come into 38. So our 39 is just above, and we can see that the market is starting to this upward momentum here starting to weaken around this sort of zone. So this could be an area where we start to look at opportunities to see if we can get a turnaround in price, see if there is something that turns around here. There is, when we come down to the lower time frames, we've got weaker momentum coming through the indicators, starting to show there's a bit of weakness here, even though the markets have just sort of punched underneath these lows. You know, we've got lows here on the indicators too, but without any real sort of strength in trend, and with the environment at the moment, that's going to be sort of rather challenging, I think, until we get some sort of conclusion. So let's come back on this. Now, what we were looking for on Monday was weaker oil prices. We've trying to remember what the level was that we were looking at. So since then we've just sort of seen a retracement back into the zone here on this week. Now, the other one that we were looking at was the dollar CAD. So if we come to now, what we're looking here on dollar CAD was for a break above the high. Maybe I get replace this line here into our yellow. So what we were looking for was a turnaround here and a break above the highs on the caddy to get out of this range. And again, we'd sort of tested these lows a few weeks ago. We were looking at this market short, and in fact, I believe we had some trades on this, if I remember correctly. Didn't quite get down to the lows of this range down the bottom, but now it's sort of turned around, started to break it to the high side. If we take a look at this on the daily, and again, I'm probably going to need to zoom out of this to get some sort of perspective on here. Earlier in the week, we were up here around these candles, and again, looking for strength as the market sort of broke through these highs over here. As you can see, that's what we were looking for with dollar strength, and this was going to be a dollar continuation of strength play. And if you come down to the time frames, you can see that we started to get trend structure, we started to get moving average geometry forming, and ultimately we can see we've got a failed attempt here, and the market sort of rolled over, and we've got that sort of weakness coming in. So this didn't play out as expected, and didn't actually trigger any setups either. So back to the drawing board on dollar CAD. So coming into the election sort of going forward, or the markets going forward, which are very much sort of being driven by the sort of US presidential elections at the moment. What do people think? What do you think is going to be the sort of impact here? I mean, we've got uncertainty at the moment. Markets are not sort of looking very favorable because of that. But what is likely to happen once we get some certainty? That's, I think, is the question. So let me. So we come over to the euro. And take a look at the euro here. So from a weekly perspective, we can see here that the euro's been contained within a range here for some time, and just sort of treading sideways there. I think the challenge here for the euro is if that dollar weakens, and let's sort of think about what sort of happened. The US dollar was was weakening. It was sort of weakening quite significantly, and then we saw the dollar strengthen coming into the presidential election. And now, if we see certainty, so once we get sort of firm decisions, what is likely to happen, whoever gets into office, is that we'll get another stimulus package for the markets. Now, if we get another stimulus package, that's almost certainly likely to weaken the US dollar. If that weakens the US dollar, that's going to help markets like the euro drive higher. So it's likely to help the strength there. Social unrest and a volatile dollar. Yeah, I think you could be right. You could be right there. Certainly on the social unrest, I think, Martin. So let's just sort of zoom into this a little bit. So what I'm thinking here is, whilst some of these other markets can be sort of extremely challenging to sort of trade at the moment, if we can look at the structures here on some of these other related markets and think what could happen here with the dollar continuing its short move. Now, if the dollar does roll over and continue to weaken, stocks are likely to rise. because we'll have sort of certainty. We could have here, again, sort of weakness in the dollar. That's likely to help the euro here push to the long side. And we've got this range here really sort of being capped around 120 at the top end and 117 to the bottom end here. Now, if we look at euro dollar in a little bit more detail, the market sort of come down to these lows here, which is at 116 or just a shade over 116. I think there is any sort of more weakness on here, and let's look at this level here. We've got another price point on this at 115. So if we look at 115 on this market, you can see, and this is the weekly chart, you can see that we've got quite significant support, resistance around 115 on this market. So I think the easy move here is that if 116 gets taken out to the short side, we could see a pop down to 115. Now, on the long side here, we could find support at either one of these, and maybe with volatility, we might even see a pop down to 115 and a bounce off this, and maybe a resumption to the long side. Let's come over to the daily time frame. And the daily, again, you can see here is looking rather sort of choppy over the past couple of days, particularly today. And this is evident of the US dollar being thrown around at the moment. So again, I think the challenge really is where would we look to from a long perspective? If we looked at that dollar weakening, could we see any sort of move in here? I think coming to the 4-hour time frame, this is looking rather challenging at the moment for sort of technical positioning. And again here on the 1-hour time frame, look at the size of these candles and the wicks on these candles over the 1-hour period compared to the average on this market. It just gives you some sort of indication. So if we were to see US dollar strengthen in the short term with, let's say, uncertainty in the markets, if that sort of continued over a foreseeable time, if election counts went to, there was lawsuits and recounts and things like this, that sort of period of uncertainty could potentially sort of give the US dollar a bit more of a boost as its safe haven status is used. If we see that sort of happening, things like the euro could be testing that 115 area. We could be seeing other weakness coming into other markets, other dollar related markets. Now, some that I think would be possibly some of the better ones to look at might be things like the Aussie as well. So having a look at the Aussie, we can see that this market is already more setting up technically for a move, potentially to the move to the short side. You've got the market sitting on top or bouncing off a technical structure level on this on the weekly chart. So a break underneath here really does, potentially sort of open it. Even if we're looking at the closest sort of structure that we could, we've still got a fair distance to the short side on some of these lower time frames. It's potentially huge. So let's have a look at the daily time frame here. And we can see here on our daily, we've got some very defined structures here if these markets take out these lows. So again, we can easily start to see the sort of windows in here. So this would be Aussie weakness, which Aussie has been weak actually for quite a few trading sessions now, hasn't it? So if we see that Aussie weakness and US dollar strength, then we could see that this sort of play start to come into action. Interesting. What you can also see is whilst here on the daily time frame, technically we've got lower highs, equal lows, lower highs forming here in price action, and indicators sort of looking quite interesting as well. So they've been converging to the short side as the market's rolled over. In fact, we've had that divergence as the market's been moving higher. Now they've been converging as the market's been moving short, and then as market's been trading sideways here, we've now got convergence on that. So we've got a pretty good sort of reading on those on the daily time frame. Now, of course, this isn't going to make anything easy setups to identify on lower time frames, so we can't expect that, I don't think, at the moment. The similar sort of thing that you're going to see here on the Kiwi as well. Again, I think the Kiwi. Okay, if we. Again, if we see strength in the dollar, we're likely to see some weakness coming into the Kiwi, and then a reversion of that once we see some weakness coming into that US dollar. So again, maybe a sort of a move to the short side, a spike to the short side in the near term, for a week or so, and then maybe a sort of resumption towards the long side on those trends. Now, one thing we haven't looked at or discussed is precious metals. So let's take a look at those. So having a look at gold here, we can see market's been contained within this sort of range here, this sort of descending triangle sort of formation for a while now, and it's really sort of coming into, if we traded patterns and looked at patterns here, one would assume that we're sort of coming to a point here where we might sort of expect a bit of a momentum explosion. Now, a presidential election could be a catalyst for, or a good excuse and a good catalyst for any kind of move here. So far, we haven't seen anything, have we? So far, we haven't seen anything. Having said that, if there is more stimulus package presented, that could sort of, like say, weaken the dollar. We could see maybe a continuation here to the long side on and pressure, of course, from the trend here certainly does look longer in the sort of longer term. Now, gold, again, similar to silver, has been sort of quite challenging over the sort of past few weeks here, as the market's just sort of been grinding sideways within these ranges. One thing that's been really quite key, though, I think, is these lower levels of support the market really has been finding some key support on them. And, each time we're sort of testing those, the market's getting a good bounce off them. It's still not going to be easy for entries, and we've got a wonderful place for stops, haven't we, underneath these lows? But and I'm sure there's lots of stops here. But at this moment, not easy from an entry perspective. I think that 1.9 level is the level that seems to be really sort of key at the moment. The market's just been above that. If we have a look here on the 4-hour time frame, just got above there last night. So let me mark in sort of 1.9. There we go. So we've got our 1.9 level through here. So we've got to actually get above there. And again, it remains to be seen what happens here now. Are we going to get back above here and start to get a bit more of a move, or is this now going to sort of roll over to the short side? So very, very sort of indecisive, but these are the structures that I'm keeping an eye on at the moment. See if it's any clearer. It's no clearer really on the lower time frames at all. Okay, so just seeing on the news wires come through, decision desk calls Trump as the winner in Wisconsin. Decision desk calls Trump the winner in Michigan. Right. So let's just hit the news wires. Let's see if we got any reaction in here. Let's come down to the 15-minute time frame. So stock indices are up. Gold's under pressure. Let's come back to okay, so here we go. So I'm just checking to see if we've got any more news on that. So we've got, how does that stand? So Wisconsin, Michigan declared Trump the winner. It's looking more positive for Mr. Trump. The okay, so I still think these levels at the top here are looking these sort of interesting levels. If we can get through here, obviously that cleans that consolidation out. Lower time frames not looking very easy at all, are they? This is down on the 15-minute time frame. Still very choppy. Okay. So very choppy markets. I think we can see that. Going to be some interesting times and developments of the as this election continues to unfold. Is there any other markets anyone wants to take a look at? Anything else that we want to discuss here on this session today? If so, drop them into the questions box and we'll take a look at those. Yeah, but Bitcoin's been doing quite well, hasn't it, lately? I don't trade Bitcoin at all, but what's been happening here? I did read an interesting article on Bitcoin this morning. Something like $1 billion worth of Bitcoin has been moved out of one of the wallets, one of the biggest wallets apparently on this market. And they're not sure whether it's just been moved to another wallet or whether it's been ready to be sold, which was quite interesting. I think they said it was, they predicted it was originated from Silk Road sales or something. So yeah, so otherwise it's going to be could be an interesting time. Hopefully we'll start to see a bit more settling down on some of these markets. Okay, look, we've been run just over our time now anyway, so let's start to wrap the session up here today. And again, I certainly hope you found it useful. For those of you who are in the trading room, let's get back to the trading room and see what's going on in the markets there. and I'll certainly keep you posted on anything else that I'm seeing in the news wires as I hear it. But I think on these election results, you'll probably sort of hear it about the same time as what I do these days. Okay, thank you very much, everybody, and speak to you soon. Thanks for now. Bye-bye.